Vasily sprinted through the chaos, heart racing as sirens blared nearby. A sudden crash echoed behind him, followed by anguished cries. He pushed his cart faster, adrenaline surging, desperate to rescue the wounded creature before it was too late. Time was slipping away, and danger loomed closer with every heartbeat. "Here, don't be afraid. Everything will be all right," Vasily said softly. He gently lifted the whimpering puppy and moved it to his pushcart. Once a child's stroller, the disused item was now a makeshift cart for his street finds. Vasily collected discarded bottles in the tattered seat and stashed cardboard in the lower basket. These would later be sold for a few coins to sustain him and his four-legged companions. But today, before he could start his usual collection run, a distressing incident unfolded in one of the back streets. The sun had not yet banished the shadows of night when people started their scramble to work. Some sprinted toward the bus station, while others jostled to unlock their cars. Amidst the chaos, a car backed up hastily, its careless driver unaware of the dog that had rushed onto the road. The sound of the collision, followed by an anguished howl, snapped Vasily into high alert. He turned to see the guilty car speeding away, leaving an injured canine behind. Vasily approached the wounded dog, which struggled to regain its footing but couldn't stand upright. He lunged towards the pitiful animal, offering his hand for comfort, but was taken aback when the dog cringed away. Its fearful eyes suggested previous encounters with human malevolence. Vasily couldn't bear to leave the poor hound on the road, where it would be at risk as dawn turned into bustling daylight. Vasily was no stranger to human cruelty. He had witnessed dogs being struck by cars, targeted by rocks, and enduring physical abuse. Not all humans were vile. Some merely feigned ignorance, turning a blind eye to animal suffering. Such incidents were all too common. Society looked down on him with disdain. To them, he was just another homeless soul. Vasily's feelings towards them weren't very different. He had little patience for such folk. However, he always found an immediate bond with dogs. They sensed his benevolent intentions. It didn't take long for Vasily to win over the trust of the scared and wounded hound. After explaining his intentions and showing compassion, the creature allowed itself to be comforted. Vasily carefully positioned the dog in his cart and began their journey towards his dwelling. Though the abandoned two-story structure near the marketplace wasn't technically his, Vasily fondly referred to it as home. The building had once served as either a post office or a telecommunications center, though no one remembered for certain. The diminutive structure lay abandoned, a contentious topic among local authorities. The leisurely rhythm of life suited Vasily. The building remained compact and deserted, offering him shelter. Almost in the heart of the city, it was void of heat in winter and electricity year-round, but surprisingly complete with unbroken windows and a few functional utilities. There was even a wash basin and a toilet, though he fetched water from the river. The structure's doors were bound shut, but Vasily found a basement panel slightly ajar, nestled among tall shrubs along the outside wall. He repaired the panel to function as a door that remained closed and inaccessible without an invitation, his best option to ascend to the first floor. In the untouched grand hall room, he claimed a cozy corner space. Discarded furniture was reinvented as a closet and a table, while discards from a dumpster transformed into a mattress for his sleeping quarters. The rooftop became his prime location to take in the tranquility of starry nights, late enough to avoid attracting attention. Losing his shelter due to Zaval's careless words was to be avoided at all costs. The local neighborhood was aware of Vasily's habitation in the derelict structure, but none seemed in a hurry to place complaints. Before Vasily arrived, the vicinity was a hotspot for substance abusers, leaving syringes scattered about. This issue noticeably ceased with his move-in. Vasily's past and how he ended up homeless remained a mystery, a topic nobody bothered to unravel. He was not alone. He was accompanied by 3 dogs. The powerful canines quickly scared off the substance abusers, establishing a safe environment within the yards. Vasily was left to his devices when a group raised concerns about the dog's unrestricted wandering. Grasping the gravity of the situation, he revised their outdoor schedules, allowing them only to roam in early dawn and late dusk when others were unlikely to be about. The dogs were kept secured within the building during the day, which seemed to settle everyone's concerns. Vasily maneuvered the stroller towards the towering shrubs, dismissing any chances of it being spotted. He then took the dog from the stroller, leading it toward a discreet cellar door. Shortly after its opening, an outburst of enthusiastic barks echoed. The dogs wagged their tails toward the man, but his hands were occupied with the injured pup. He brought the animal into his modest room and placed it on the scraps he used as temporary bedding for the animals. Vasily couldn't afford vets or medication. All he could provide was sustenance, refreshment, and rest for the injured pet. The dog trembled in fear, and Vasily's pets barked at the newcomer. He ushered the other dogs out, shut the door, and lifted a finger, muffling the raucous barking. He assessed the animals and released a heavy exhale. They were no longer just a trio. The first had appeared unexpectedly. Bim had found himself by Vasily's side when he was wandering the fringes of town in search of scrap metal. The dog approached, sniffed the man, and immediately started jogging beside him. It had been about 2 years since that incident, and Bim hadn't left his side. Vasily discovered Chernyshaw as a tiny frozen pup and couldn't overlook her. He picked her up, warmed her, and nourished her. The dog grew fit, bigger than Bim, and accompanied her rescuer everywhere, her tail ever wagging. Vasily swapped Aurora for a bottle of juice, saw another homeless person mistreating a restrained animal, and pleaded for its release. The man merely sneered, then demanded a juice bottle for the creature. Vasily spent all his earnings, but he wasn't distressed. Aurora proved to be the most faithful companion. When cold weather arrived, she snuggled up to his back, providing warmth during his slumbers. Beginning with those initial dogs, Vasily received Ginger, Aaliyah, Graf, Bulka, Mimi, and a full gang of puppies. He didn't merely pick them up from the road. If the creature could sustain itself, Vasily let it be. Every one of his charges had their own unfortunate narrative. Some were hit by bikes, attacked with rods, succumbed to freezing conditions, or threatened to be submerged. Not every animal Vasily brought home survived. Despite his efforts, he could do nothing about blood infections or internal injuries. Many dogs departed permanently. Vasily reassured himself that their final hours were under shelter, not in seclusion. He would take the pitiful souls far away to an empty plot and bury them there. Whether this struck dog would live, he didn't know. After the accident, only a few had recuperated, but Vasily earnestly hoped this dog would escape the tragic trend. He let his cherished canine companions roam the large vacant room while he returned to the empty streets. His agenda was to gather enough cardboard and bottles, sell them, and use the proceeds to feed the dogs. He heard they were selling chicken feet at the local butcher shop today. It was precisely what he required. Certainly he couldn't visit the official store. They'd oust him immediately to prevent unsettling the clients. But they did handle transactions and handed purchases at the back doors. Vasily rushed to his collection sites. Typically, he would commence bright and early and manage to scour the area before other collectors started. But today, due to the whole dog situation, he was running late. Regardless of where Vasily directed his gaze, everything was spotless. There were no bottles, no cardboard, not even garbage. He had just missed the waste pickup truck. With each new alley, the man's spirits dipped lower. He was pulling his barren cart down the street when he noticed a large bill flutter out of a young lady's pocket ahead of him. The lady didn't catch that she had dropped the money. Vasily halted, collected the bill, and deliberated over it. The cash could cover the canine food problem for several days. The lady likely wouldn't even recall where or when she lost the bill. He sneaked a peek at her departing figure and solidified his decision regarding the unexpected windfall. "Excuse me, this fell from your pocket." Vasily closed the gap and handed her the bill. The woman recoiled at the sight of the disheveled man. Contempt washed over her features, yet she reached into her pocket to confirm her cash was still there. Finding it missing, her eyebrows shot up in surprise. Retaining her sneering expression, she gingerly accepted the bill from Vasily's hand, nodded, and hurried off as if he were a plague. Vasily chuckled, trailing after her. Stereotypes are the most potent shackles society has contrived. Despite any good deeds you do, you'll only earn a disdainful glance in return. He had to adjust to it, but he just couldn't. That's why he surrounded himself with his most faithful companions, the dogs. Vasily meandered about the park for an extended period, prying into every garbage can, but found nothing barring a couple of bottles and a pizza box. With such scant findings, it wasn't worthwhile heading to the recycling center. He hoped the dogs would scavenge something for themselves when he released them for their walk. Defeated, Vasily started the trek back home. While he was just around the corner, an urgent siren blared and a fire engine zoomed past him. Concerned, he quickened his step. He typically didn't follow emergency services, but presently a feeling of disquiet washed over him. Hastily, Vasily rounded the corner and froze. The firefighters were at his home, the building he had called his sanctuary for many months. Smoke wafted from the grimy windows. If Vasily ever made a fire, it was outside, in a hidden corner between the exterior wall and a garage. He never kindled flames inside, even during the coldest periods, understanding the risk. And now a fire had inexplicably taken over his home. His initial shock subsided when a resident alerted him. "Your dogs are inside!" Vasily immediately left his cart in the middle of the walkway and sprinted towards the building. A miniature crowd of spectators and local dwellers had already amassed nearby. The firefighters couldn't approach the structure. One side of the route was obstructed by a hefty concrete beam, placed there by locals to eliminate unfamiliar car traffic through the yard. On the other side, the path was impeded with parked vehicles. The fire engine could not make it past this improvised parking zone. "Reverse!" someone yelled to the driver. "Take a detour from the other direction." Vasily peeked at the route given by the onlooker and silently grumbled. The path was clear, but it meant circumventing 2 blocks. No matter how prompt the firemen were, they would still arrive too late. Vasily resolved to take action. If he didn't save his dogs, then who would? Vasily swiftly navigated around the structure and plunged into the shrubbery where the cellar door was hidden. Smoke gushed out relentlessly. Vasily flung open the doors, instantly met with an overpowering surge of heat. He recoiled. The fire was seemingly originating from the cellar, filled with old cloth pieces, debris of construction materials, and tires strewn about. While the flames were not visible, the space was engulfed in thick smoke. Vasily forged ahead almost blindly, his eyes smarting and his throat aching from the dense smoke. But he didn't halt. The steps leading to the upper level were close by, and he swiftly scaled them. Upon entering the first floor, he noticed a black figure lying beneath him. Vasily didn't scrutinize it, but his fingers recognized the familiar long fur unique to his dog. As the man traced the path of the dog, he unexpectedly found himself in his storehouse. He discovered the distressed dog he had rescued earlier in the day. Overwhelmed by smoke, Vasily sympathized with the animal, picked it up, and hastily left the room. A scattering of animals scuttled underfoot. A loud noise echoed from below, startling him. He couldn't recollect any object that could have fallen, save for the basement door. Should the exit be unreachable, descending would be pointless. To escape, he would have to breach the front door or shatter a window. But both tasks presented their own challenges. Unexpectedly, his foot grazed the stairs leading to the second level. It occurred to Vasily that the edifice had a level roof. He signaled the dog with a whistle and hastily ascended the stairs, squinting against the smoke. Upon locating the ladder to the roof, he positioned the injured dog beneath it and clambered up. Once on the roof, he wedged the door open to facilitate easy access. A gust of crisp air brought temporary relief. After filling his lungs with fresh air and coughing, he descended, relocated the dog, and carried it to safety on the roof. The rest of the animals were shepherded onto the roof in quick succession. As he accounted for the pup, a notable absence sent a chill down his spine. One was missing. He attempted to descend, but his vision was obscured by smoke. Calling for the missing canine only worsened his cough. Suddenly, he felt a nudge against his knee. Recognizing the feel of Bim's wiry fur, he quickly scooped up the dog and rushed it upstairs. Vasily had barely reached the roof when he noticed Bim clutching a motionless pup in his jaws. His spirits soared. After securing all the animals, he closed the door to prevent smoke from seeping out. This was when the harsh reality set in. They were trapped. The only exit was an impassable barrier of smoke and fire. His eyes watered and his lungs protested. Circling to the rim of the roof in search of fire trucks, he was disappointed by their absence. However, a crowd had gathered. "Vasya, you all right?" someone hollered. Vasily was taken aback. He hadn't expected anyone to know his name. Looking around incredulously, he realized all eyes were on him. "We're fine," he responded hesitantly. "We just need help evacuating the dogs." Another crash echoed from below. The assembled crowd fell back in stunned silence from the panes of glass. The inferno had reignited and reached the primary tier. Vasily looked at the roadway, but it was still vacant. "Release the dogs, we'll break their fall," a voice called from underneath. "What happens if your aim is off? They'll only end up becoming coworkers forever," Vasily sharply shot back. The crowd's atmosphere adjusted. An individual from a neighboring dwelling dashed toward the flames and returned with a blanket. They snatched it up and positioned it beneath the windows to break the dogs' falls. "Let's go!" While Vasily wanted to avoid injuring the dogs, remaining idle and waiting for the fire to consume the rooftop wasn't an option. The temperature was rising by the minute. Vasily picked up Bim by the legs, leaned over the ledge, and entrusted him to the blanket below. Although taken aback, Bim was caught safely. The blanket drooped, and then a swift hand removed the creature to safety. After ensuring Bim was safe, the other pets soon followed in a flight down. Despite fear evident in their whimpers, the dogs were at ease once they landed on the ground. Mimi resisted leaving, even nipping at Vasily, but the puppies first and then their mother followed. Only Vasily and a wounded dog remained on the roof. He worried about dropping her, fearful that her injured spine wouldn't hold up, despite the soft blanket cushioning the fall. The rooftop was becoming unbearably hot. With the dog in his arms, Vasily decided to check the road. Relieved to see an approaching fire engine on the horizon, he realized the real task was to wait it out. The buildup of heat caused the windows on the first level to break, and the crowd moved further back. Despite confusion, the dogs gazed at their owner. Vasily tried to push them back, but they refused to leave his side. A few brave individuals from the crowd physically pulled the dogs away from the site. The firemen arrived just in time. They assisted Vasily and the wounded pet down with a ladder, then started to eliminate the flames. As he finally touched solid ground, Vasily let out a sigh of relief. His attention immediately turned to his charges. Near him, Bim and Chernisha wagged their tails with renewed enthusiasm. From other parts of the crowd, he could hear the barks of the rest. Suddenly, he saw Mimi and the puppies being placed in carriers. "Where are you taking them?" Vasily called out, worried. The young lady spun around, introducing herself as a volunteer and explaining her plan to take the pups and their mother to the veterinarian. "And after that?" Vasily pressed for more information. "We'll find them new homes," was her nonchalant reply as she pivoted toward the car. Despite her departure, Vasily wasn't satisfied. He caught her sleeve, narrowing his eyes to scrutinize her face. Usually hesitant around others, this moment was an exception. Surprisingly, she didn't pull away or show discomfort. She simply returned his gaze with curiosity. "Promise me you'll find them loving homes? Or are you planning to discard them in the river, bagged like unwanted items?" His question held a serious tone. The volunteer's face mirrored clear indignation, making Vasily briefly regret his assumption. But his apprehensions couldn't be caged. The girl, now sounding highly offended, swore to oversee the puppy's future well-being. This reassured Vasily, and he released her sleeve, stepping away from the car. "Why isn't the poor creature moving?" someone inquired, pointing at the beaten dog. Vasily relayed the cruel incident passionately, not omitting a single brutal detail about the perpetrator who fled the scene. The story stirred compassion among the crowd. One of the dog rescuers offered to cover the vet expenses of the injured canine. Recognizing his limitations, Vasily conceded. A question about his condition then popped up in the crowd. A bottle of water was handed to him. Vasily looked around in surprise when a supportive hand landed on his shoulder. The people surrounding him didn't shy away or cringe. Instead, they conversed with him genuinely. He couldn't recall the last time someone showed similar interest in him. The structure was reduced to ruins. Vasily later found out it was torched by the drug users he had evicted, seeking revenge. Once again, destitution left him with only his rickety cart. Yet all his dogs were alive, which filled his heart with joy. Together, Vasily and the dogs set off in search of a new place to live. They didn't travel too far. He discovered an abandoned kiosk with shattered windows and doors down the next street. Choosing it as a temporary refuge, he slept there while searching for better options. He scavenged some old jackets from a nearby trash can, used them as bedding on the floor, cuddled the dogs, and drifted asleep. The following day, miracles started to unravel. Vasily awoke to the aroma of food. Rising, he was startled to find a tray with a steaming omelet and a mug of coffee at the kiosk window. The dogs gleefully munched from their dishes. Exiting his provisional haven, he was met with a gathering of people that included journalists, locals from neighboring houses, and benevolent strangers. They brought food in large vessels, bags of dog food, bedding, collars, and flea sprays. A kind soul gave Vasily a fresh pillow along with a blanket and a packet of pristine clothing. A different woman gifted him a pair of high-quality sneakers. The press swarmed him with inquiries about his journey to becoming a dog rescuer and his financial strategies for their nourishment. As Vasily surveyed the scene, he was increasingly taken aback. People continued to stop by, inadvertently rekindling his hope in mankind. He was uncertain about the future, but for the first time, it didn't appear grim. For the next several days, he wouldn't have to rummage around the city for bottles and cardboard to trade for food. Although he suffered a total loss in the fire, he instantly received aid and encouragement from an unexpected resource.